Welcome to another FJX 2000 production. In this episode of Let's FJ, we will be taking a step back to look at my first FJ Cruiser. For those who have seen my early YouTube videos or have been subscribed for a while, you know which FJ I'm talking about. My original black TRD Special Edition. We will be going over the history of that FJ, including the build and modding of it, some of my favorite trips and moments, and the eventual fate of what has become of my original TRD FJ. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I am doing this as a way of celebrating hitting 2,000 subscribers. I appreciate those who have been watching my videos and leaving positive comments for a while now, and this achievement wouldn't have been possible without viewers like you. This is actually my first time doing a video like this, so be sure to leave a like if you enjoy this type of content. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to be notified of future FJX 2000 videos. Now let's get started. Like most FJs, mine had humble beginnings. I'm not sure how many other owners the FJ had before me, but this was actually my first car ever. When I was 17 and first looking at getting a car, I dreamed of getting something fast and sporty, but my parents wanted to get something that would be reliable, good in the Colorado snows, and possibly be a good vehicle my dad and I could drive into the mountains to take hunting. During my family's search for the right car, one of my neighbors and good family friends happened to get a Sun Fusion FJ Cruiser. It was only slightly modded, but he mentioned how fun and awesome it was to drive, and how it felt like a tank whenever he drove it. I thought that sounded pretty cool. I like tanks. And having grown up being a huge fan of the rugged-looking vehicles like Hummer, H1s, and H2s, I basically thought the FJ looked sort of like a smaller, more practical version of one of those. The more research I did about FJs, the more I fell in love with their look and with their features, and I just had to have one. I test drove a couple to get a feel for how they drove and looked online every day looking at different FJs on the market. I narrowed down my search to either wanting a classic voodoo blue FJ with a white roof or an all-black TRD Special Edition. It just so happened that on KSL.com we found a TRD SE for sale up in Idaho. The mileage and price was right, so my family visited Salt Lake and my dad flew up to Boise from there and drove back home with the new FJ Cruiser. I was so excited that this dream could finally become a reality, and I am so thankful and blessed for my parents who were able to make it happen. Thanks, Mom and Dad. This FJ being a TRD Special Edition, there were only 3,200 made, and it came with all the bells and whistles offered from Toyota. The paint was a black diamond pearl, and it set itself apart from the white-roofed counterparts with its monochromatic paint scheme, meaning both the roof and body were black. It was also outfitted with 16-inch TRD gunmetal gray wheels, which were only used on this model and specific year of special editions. And it had off-road tuned TRD Bilstein suspension. It of course had the TRD Special Edition badging on both the rear door and the dashboard, and it also had TRD emblems incorporated into the floor mats. It had the factory rock rails, roof rack, aluminum door sill protectors, the TRD cold air intake, and the TRD catback exhaust system. This thing was legit. And it of course was equipped with 4-wheel drive, a rear locking differential, the 8-track system, and a premium sound system complete with the factory subwoofer, which was one of my favorite things about it. The only mods done to the FJ by its previous owners at this point included the BFG KO all-terrain tires, which were 285/75 R16s versus the factory 265 size. It had dark black tinted windows. It had the 4 KC highlights mounted on the roof rack, as well as a ski or snowboard holder up on the roof rack. And it had an aftermarket alarm and remote start system, but we'll talk about that one later. We bought the FJ in April of 2011 before I had actually gotten my driver's license. So for the first weeks of ownership, my dad actually drove the FJ as a daily driver, since he knew once I got my license, his days of driving the FJ would become very limited. Before the keys were ever even handed over to me though, one day my dad came home and he had a lift kit installed on the FJ. It was specifically a ReadyLift 3-inch lift kit, which is actually just a small spacer lift that honestly is not quite ideal, but it did get the job done. Unfortunately, the only photos I have to show of my FJ are with the lift already installed, so I have nothing to show you from before that point. These are some of the earliest pictures I have, including this one where I went mudding with some friends in a neighboring town. At this point, I had no idea how to really engage the 4-wheel drive or work the special systems like the rear locker or A-track. In these early days, one of my best friends actually made a video about my FJ for a school project. Here are some clips. I will leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out, as well as other YouTube videos I've made, and these clips you're going to be seeing throughout today's video. His video that he made was a little silly, but I do enjoy how it shows what my FJ looked like before I had really done anything to it. It wasn't until December of 2011 that I actually joined the FJ Cruiser forums, though I had lurked on there for a little while beforehand. It was there that I met an awesome community of FJ owners with my same passion, and it was there that I got tons of inspiration and ideas for modifications. One of the first mods I did to make my FJ unique and personalized to my own tastes at the time was the addition of aluminum grills to both the main grille and bumper grills of the FJ. I installed these specifically with the intention of adding Transformers Autobot emblems in the cleanest way possible, since at the time I was obsessed with Transformers. This was before the Transformers movies became really bad, so don't judge me too hard, and if I look back now, I wish I would have just stuck with the original Toyota logo and the original factory grille. But oh well, it kind of made my FJ unique, and in the end, I ended up calling my FJ Storm Damage, since I thought that kind of sounded like a cool Transformer name. But in the end, I would later just call the FJ the Black Pearl, kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean, which totally fits, since the paint color is Black Diamond Pearl. Time went by and my Boy Scout troop decided to go visit a section along the historic San Juan Trail known as the Twist for one of our scout camps. This was in March of 2012, and this was a trip that would change my life forever. Not only was it a fun trip getting to spend time with my fellow scouts and getting to see the amazing natural beauty all around us there in southeastern Utah, but this was my first time really off-roading and getting to play around with my FJ. The friend who had introduced me to the FJ and had the Sun Fusion rig I talked about earlier was there since he was actually one of my scout leaders. And we had a grand old time posing for some epic photos and getting a little tippy on the rocks. But it was because of this trip that I got the bug, the modding bug. And boy did it bite hard. After this trip, my mind was solely set on not only building a sweet looking FJ, but also building an FJ that was more capable for off-roading. The FJ Cruiser, even in its stock form, is an amazing vehicle with amazing off-road capabilities. If you haven't off-roaded or started modding your FJ yet, I would get out there and see what your rig can do even before you put any money into it. If you can see where your FJ is or isn't capable of at this point, you can really get a feel for which mods are most important to you for your specific tastes or circumstances. One of the first mods I did to my FJ was actually on the interior, and it was the addition of these blue LED strips underneath the radio and climate controls. To this day, this has been one of my favorite mods on both this FJ and my current FJ. The light strips are flexible 8-inch LEDs from AutoZone that I had a shop in my town called AudioBox install. They added a switch for them on the plastic panel underneath the steering wheel so these could be turned on and off, but I loved how they lit up the buttons located in the center console, and it made it easier to see at night. It especially was nice when selecting songs on my iPod, which I still use today. And I ended up replacing the mirror lights, license plate lights, interior dome lights, and reverse lights, all with LEDs, that I got from superbrightleds.com. I really enjoyed these as well, as they kind of had a more modern, clean look to them instead of the yellowish, halogen, old school look. Also made a discovery around this time of my car's remote start and alarm system. Though it hadn't been advertised on the FJ when I bought it, in the engine bay there was an aftermarket looking siren, and in the top of the windshield there was a little antenna, and I had no idea what they were for. But one day I looked up the brand name that was on the antenna, and it turned out to be a remote start and alarm system from a company called CompuStar. Luckily, AudioBox, the shop that had installed those LED lights on my center console, they were also a dealer for CompuStar, and they were able to replace some of the bad wiring of that system and get me a new programmed CompuStar keychain remote, which added a really cool functionality to my FJ of being able to remote start it from a distance and know if someone was tampering with my FJ. Around this time, and specifically after some more off-roading and camping trips to the mountains around where I live, I realized that my tires were getting really bald, and I started to look for new options. I knew I wanted something aggressive and started looking into tires that people had suggested to me. My neighbor had suggested Mickey Thompson Baja MTZs, which I quite seriously considered. But I also looked at Nitto, Toyo, BFG, and whatnot. But ultimately, I went with the favorite tire of my local tire shop, the Fierce Attitude. And not only did I get these tires for my FJ, but I wanted to truly upgrade my FJ's capabilities. So I decided to go slightly bigger from 285s to 305 70 R16s. Basically, a 33-inch tall tire that is 12.5 inches wide on a 16-inch wheel. But before I installed them, I actually learned from another forum member's experience about these specific tires in this specific size of how to fit them. I knew in order to get them to clear my upper control arms, I had to either go with an aftermarket tubular option of upper control arm, which was a bit too expensive at the time, or go with wheel spacers. And I ended up choosing Spider Track's 1.25 inch wheel spacers, which is a trusted brand within the FJ community, at least among those who like wheel spacers. The downside of these, though, was now my tires were likely to rub on the body mount. So after doing a bit of research and finding out that I needed a body mount shop, I found a local shop that was willing to do it. And after that, I had no rubbing problems whatsoever. This system worked out great, and I still love how it looked to this day. They were a great, aggressive off-road tire, yet they were comfortable and quiet on the highway, kind of like an all-terrain tire. Time went on and the FJ treated me well, but as you can see, some of the front silver paint on the bumper started to come off, which was the result of me accidentally spraying a little too close with the power washer. And due to the lack of adhesion, eventually, after a hot summer day in the sun, my Autobots emblem fell off the front grille. But this actually resulted in a really clean look for the rig that I would retain to the day that I sold the FJ. But then disaster struck. On the night of July 4th in 2012, my cousins and I decided to drive closer to the evening's fireworks show when I accidentally slipped into an unforeseen ditch in a field. I was super sad to see the FJ so crunched up on the driver's side, and was especially distraught since my first big off-roading trip in the FJ was coming up, my first FJ Summit. So after a recovery by some nice locals who brought their tractors out, and finding the FJ was still very drivable, I took it to a body shop and had them get to work. Within 2 weeks, the FJ was finished, and I finally was able to get something done I had been dreaming of doing for a while: a blackout. Since the shop would be repainting and repairing half the FJ already, I had them do a matte black on all the silver trim in order to get that super clean, murdered out look that I had absolutely loved the look of. I enjoyed how the Trail Team Special Edition FJs had that blacked out trim from the factory, and now my FJ had that look as well. I had the FJ done just in time, since the following day my dad and I headed out to my first ever FJ Summit. We actually off-roaded on Black Bear Pass, which was amazing and an incredible experience since it was my first time. But I was a little too scared and nervous to off-road on the steps or at Pucker Point along that trail, so I had my dad drive that section. We actually had Ray, the owner of Pure FJ Cruiser, behind us on Black Bear Pass, and he recorded my FJ with his GoPro as we went down this section of the trail. Him and his wife are such nice people, and have hooked me up with a bunch of FJ stuff over the years. Be sure to check them out sometime. It was actually at the FJ Summit that I picked up some Rock Tech lower link armor as well as some rear shock skids from Pure FJ Cruiser. I'm glad I got them, as I would definitely put them to use. And unfortunately, the company who made them isn't around anymore, so I wish I would have kept them for my new FJ. But around that time that I installed these parts, I also played around with my mud flaps. I removed the front ones and put them where the rear ones used to be, and I enjoyed the look since they showed off my rear tires a little more. I also added my FJ Summit grill badge, but instead installed it on my rear cargo door with some 3M adhesive, since I couldn't get it to fit with my aftermarket front grille. It would be a while till I got another major mod, but in the meantime, some of my off-roading highlights included joining the Book Cliff Cruisers out of Grand Junction, Colorado, as they off-roaded around Silverton and Ouray, Colorado. One of their members reached out to me on the I Hate Mud forum a day or two after I joined, and that forum specifically for Land Cruisers, but they still invited me along. And it was a fun little day trip for my dad and I, since it was basically like FJ Summit 2.0 that summer. Soon afterwards, I departed from my first year of college, and it was actually up here that I met some of my favorite roommates of all time, Jordan and Tyler. They were brothers and became good buddies of mine. Tyler specifically liked cars, and though he didn't have his own off-road vehicle, he joined me on many of my little off-road excursions and became my co-pilot. It was great fun, and before long we actually started an off-road club at our school, which you may have seen in some of my past YouTube videos, the UVU Off-Road Adventure Club. We went as a club on many trips to an area known as 5 Mile Pass, where we off-roaded on a trail called Rattlesnake, also known as the Rattlesnake Trail or Rattlesnake Canyon. It was here that I did some of my most technical off-roading to this point, and it definitely got my feet wet when it came to carefully choosing lines and learning more about my locker and A-track systems of the FJ. By the end of the year, Rattlesnake was a piece of cake after I had driven it about 5 or 6 separate times on miscellaneous off-road trips, both with my off-road club and with other Utah FJers. Around Christmas time, I decided in order to accommodate my wider Fierce Attitude tires, which seemed to be kicking up quite a bit of mud and rocks on the trails, that I wanted to install the tough and rugged looking Bushwhacker pocket-style fender flares. After getting these for Christmas and installing them, it definitely provided some more room for articulation of my suspension, and helped things from getting kicked up on the sides of my FJ's paint. I also installed some 8000K 55-watt HIDs from DDM Tuning, in order to get much more light output than before, and they matched my mirror LEDs. These lights were great and never gave me any issues. However, as just a note, in later years with my second FJ, I ended up ordering some more DDM Tuning HIDs, but with very poor results. Their new HID bulb design or manufacturer has changed, and the new product offered from DDM Tuning pretty much stinks. So I would avoid them if you want to go with a high-low bi-xenon HID from them. One thing about the early 2007 FJ Cruisers that some people discovered is that they had notoriously weak differential gears, and though I only had 33-inch tires, one day as I was driving down the highway, I heard a large bang come from the back end of my FJ. Turned out that 2 teeth had sheared off randomly from my pinion gear, and it required the replacement of my entire third member. It was very inconvenient, and I had to go without my FJ for a couple weeks, but luckily after it got repaired, it was good as new. I was also able to find someone that worked at Low Range Off-Road up in Utah who was willing to give me some light racing upper control arms in exchange for my old broken third member, which he planned on rebuilding. It worked out well for me, and the SPC UCAs were a welcome addition to my FJ, as my stock upper control arms had been beaten up quite a bit. So, with the help of some local FJ Cruiser owners that I knew from the forums, they helped me replace my upper control arms. These are great guys, and we had great times. I love the Utah FJ folks, and we even had a meet and greet and eat once upon a time up in Layton. In April 2013, before the end of my first year of college, the UVU Off-Road Adventure Club took its first big end-of-the-year trip down to Moab, Utah, and we ended up doing a few trails down there for a couple of days. In my life, I had driven through Moab countless numbers of times, due to where I grew up and where the rest of my family lives. But this was my first time going to Moab to actually go to Moab. It was so cool to take the FJ there and show what it could do, especially since I was able to keep up with all my jeeping buddies. I did trails like Hell's Revenge, Fins and Things, and Poison Spider Mesa. It was a super great time, and I actually made videos for each of the different days we were there, off-roading on the different trails, so be sure to check those out sometime. Then, only about a month later, I was actually able to go to Moab again, but for the Cruise Moab event. It was so cool to once again tackle some of the trails like Fins and Things and Hell's Revenge that I had done once before by this point. I had my dad with me, and we also got to go on Elephant Hill for the first time, which is in Canyonlands National Park. It was super cool, and the really narrow part of that trail was really crazy, but super memorable. We had a really good time, and though that trail was pretty far away from everything else, it was a blast, and is definitely still one of my favorites to this day. It was also so fun to brush shoulders with a few of the guys that I had met from the past FJ Summit I had attended, as well as from the forums. It was around this time that my old scout troop decided to go on their annual trip to the Twist once again, down in southeastern Utah. It was only a year prior to this that had launched me on this whole course of off-roading and FJ madness, so I decided to go again. It brought back a lot of memories and was again a memorable trip for me. It was cool since my old Scoutmaster was again there with his FJ, and we had fun once again driving around on the trails and playing with our Toyotas. I also liked getting to park in some of the places we had a year before, and seeing the comparison of my rig from then to now. Around this time, I knew my time with the FJ would be coming to a close. I had plans to serve a 2-year mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I had already actually received my mission call to Northern California. I would be leaving in the fall, so I posted my FJ up for sale, but continued to get the most out of my FJ while I still could. A big highlight of this summer would be the trip I took with my family to my second FJ Summit. This year, after gaining tons of knowledge on off-roading, and after experiencing the FJ Summit in the past, I actually tried out some new trails like the Alpine Loop and Poughkeepsie Gulch, and of course, once again, Black Bear Pass. I was actually the trail leader this year for one of the Alpine Loop runs. It was a neat experience, and getting to brush shoulders again with some of my favorite people and getting to experience the FJ glory that is the FJ Summit all over again was fun and memorable. It wasn't too long before I found a buyer out of Utah who was interested in the Black Pearl, so I made 1 or 2 last-minute off-road trips in the good old FJ on a local trail up to Kennebec Pass, one of which was with my dad. It was a wonderful way to say goodbye to the FJ by using it for what I had built it for. And after removing all my decals and stickers I had adorned the windows with, just leaving my custom FJ Cruiser door panel decals and TRD decals, and being sure to keep my rare Drake off-road shifter knobs for the future, I took the FJ to Moab to meet up with the new owner there. It was a sad moment to watch my beloved FJ drive away, knowing the chances of ever seeing her again were slim. But it was good to know the money that we got back from the FJ would go towards supporting me during my 2 years I was off on my mission. The mission was one of the greatest experiences of my life, but even the journey I had with this FJ leading up to my mission would forever change my life. FJs had become a part of who I was, and I had become a part of this amazing community of people, many of whom I had become friends with, and had taught me so much. What I learned during this 2-year period of FJ ownership was not only how to work on a car, but how to be a leader, an example, a follower, and a friend to all those who share my same passion. I am truly blessed to have been given this opportunity of a lifetime due to my amazing parents. I can't really imagine what my life would be like had I not have had the FJ Cruiser. It is a fun and amazing car with limitless possibilities. If you have one, enjoy every day of it. And if you don't, hopefully you can have just as an amazing of an experience, but with whatever your hobby is, or whatever your passion in life may be. Now you may be wondering, what happened to the Black Pearl? Where is it today? Well, actually, I was informed by a fellow forum member that it is again for sale on Craigslist out in California. Apparently the guy I sold it to in Utah sold it to someone in California, who then sold it to another person in California, and that's who's selling it now. I was able to FaceTime the owner of it now, and got to get a walk around of the FJ as it sits today. The only thing that's changed is now it has a new head unit for the radio, but other than that, it's the same as how I left it. However, I guess in between when I sold it and where it is now, they lost the remote starter. Silly people. Either way, I dreamed for a couple weeks of a way that I could once again have my original FJ back. but it seems that it'll just stay a dream for me, as it is not possible with my current funds. If I someday do get the chance, it would be so neat to have that original FJ back, but until then, I hope it stays safe and in good hands. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. If you have any thoughts on this video or ideas for future videos, let me know in the comments down below. If you want to see more videos like this one, let me know by clicking that like button, and be sure to subscribe to get future FJX 2000 Productions content. This has been a fun video for me to make, and again, thank you to all my current subscribers who have helped me reach this goal of at least 2,000 subscribers. Here is to 3,000.